Hi, everybody. My name is Nanika Edwards. I am a poet, artist, and author from Trinidad and Tobago in the Southern Caribbean. And today we're going to be dealing with critical thinking. And I know you may be wondering why there is this particular creature as my cover image, and you're soon going to find out. But by the way, do you know what this is? Can you tell me what this creature actually is? If you guessed a crab, you are very, very correct. And what colors can you see here? We've got red, black, blue, and green. This is a really fun project to do. So even if you'd like to get some craft paper and do this project on your own, you can. All right, this is what critical thinking is. Critical in this case means analytical. Usually when we hear the word critical, we may think of the word criticize, and we may think that critical in this sense might be a negative word. Like when we talk about critical thinking, we may think that critical thinking is all about criticizing things or criticizing people. But no, in this case, critical actually means analytical. Analytical, what do we mean by analytical? Do you know? Analytical really means kind of probing things, digging deeper, taking different strands and different cues and clues and information and putting together a whole picture that makes sense, like taking different puzzle pieces that may be scattered and separate from each other, bringing them together, and then making a whole picture that makes sense. That's what we mean by being analytical, and also by being by critical thinking in a sense. When we say thinking here, we mean reasoning. Critical thinking is about analytical reasoning. Reasoning meaning that whatever we think, whatever conclusions we come to about a particular thing, it should make sense. One and one must add up to two. And if one and one is adding up to three, we need to figure out, does that make sense? Why is that the case? So critical thinking is about reasoning, making sense of things, or saying that something maybe doesn't make sense, like one and one does not add up to three, right? So critical thinking is about analytical reasoning, making sense of things, right? So critical thinking, analytical reasoning. All right. So, there are many different facets to critical thinking, and critical thinking involves many different skills. I'm not going to get into a big long discussion about that. If you continue following my channel, you will see other critical thinking videos over the next little while that will help you develop different areas of critical thinking that can be really useful to you in thinking about your own thinking, in building relationships and making good choices in life. Critical thinking involves so many different things, and it's a really useful skill to develop, and anybody can develop their critical thinking skills. Today, I'm going to be using maybe what some may consider an unusual tool to help us develop our critical thinking, and that's going to be Chinese. All right. So I know that very often people look at Chinese script and they think, wow, that looks like something from another galaxy. A lot of people think that Chinese writing is very strange, but Chinese writing actually makes a lot of sense once you get to understand how it is constructed, how it's how the words in Chinese are put together. Okay. So one thing I should explain is that in Chinese, there's no alphabet in Chinese. The Chinese language does not have an alphabet. I know that that sounds strange, but believe you me, they have found a way to make this work. And the reason why I decided to use Chinese as part of my critical thinking program, for want of a better word, is because one of the things that can help us think critically is to step beyond our comfort zone and see the world through the eyes of another perspective that may be very different from our own. Because what you want to do as a critical thinker is to expand your view of the world so that you can better consider things from different angles. With this exercise, though, apart from just stepping beyond our comfort zone, what we're actually going to be testing and exercising, and the muscle that we're going to be developing, is our ability to reason. So here you can see a Chinese word. This is the simplified script for the word crab. And in Chinese, there are two different scripts: traditional script and simplified script. The simplified script is the type of writing that is used on mainland China, and the traditional script is used in Taiwan. So here we see the word for crab in Chinese. And let's analyze it, because actually it makes a lot of sense. Once you get to know Chinese words, you see that they make a lot of sense. This word is pronounced pang xie. Pang xie. And pang means crab, and xie also means crab. So in Chinese, very often they may have two words coming together to form one word, and those two different words could actually mean exactly the same thing. So for example, in Chinese, the word for friend is peng you, peng you. Peng means friend and yo means friend. And the word is not complete unless you bring those two different components together. So in Chinese, friend is friend, friend. And in Chinese, crab is crab, crab. So this is just a different way of looking at the world. And what you don't want to do is say is, well, we don't have that in English, so it doesn't make sense to me. Well, if something only makes sense to you because it's part of your world, then you really limit yourself, and you should really consider stepping into some different shoes. Okay, so anyway, let's put on our thinking caps and look at these Chinese words a little more closely. So here we see the first word, pang. On the left-hand side is a component or element that represents a small creature. It usually means worm, insect, snake, but it really can also just generally mean a small creature. What is next to that is an element that means side. So they've put two components together: small creature and side. And by the way, one of the things I should explain is that Chinese is thousands of years old. The script is thousands of years old. And the people who designed the script studied life very carefully. They studied their environment very carefully. And they always found the best way to create new words by describing exactly what the word represents with elements that make sense, okay? So small creature with side is not arbitrary. Why do you think they put small creature with side to represent a crab? You want to think about that a little bit? Give that some thought. Why would they put small creature with side? Well, let's start with the first part. Is a crab a small creature? Yes, it is. A crab is usually a pretty small creature, unless you're dealing with those giant crabs that they have in Japan, right? But usually crabs are pretty small creatures. So that makes sense. All right. How about the component on the right-hand side? The one that represents side. Why do you think they use that to define a crab? If you guessed because crabs walk sideways, I think you would be very correct. I mean, we cannot go back in time to have a conversation with the Chinese person who designed this word to ask them exactly what they were thinking. But I think we can make a pretty good guess that a crab was defined as a small creature. A crab was defined as a small creature that walks sideways. Like crabs don't walk, backwards or forward, kind of like what humans can do. You notice that crabs tend to walk sideways, right? Yeah. So that makes sense. Now let's look at the second word. This is the word xie. Xie. And on top, we have a component that means untie, divide. And below that, we have the same component from the first word, which means small creature. It probably looks familiar to you now. All right, so we've already established that a crab is a small creature. What about untie and divide? Well, let's start with untie. Why would a crab be a small creature that you untie? Do you want to give that some thought? Do you want to discuss it with your classmates or with whoever is with you watching this video? Why would a crab be a small creature that you untie? If you're from the Caribbean, this might not be too difficult to work out. Have you ever been to the market, say in Trinidad? If you're from Trinidad and you've been to the market before, this would probably make a lot of sense to you. When you see crabs at the market in Trinidad, are they usually tied up? Yes, they are. So if you're going to cook a crab or do something with a crab that you get at the market, chances are you're going to have to untie it because they tend to tie the pincers so that nobody would get hurt if they buy the crabs, right? If they buy them live. So that makes sense. Okay, untie them does make sense. What about divide? Is it a small creature that you divide? Well, what do you think? Why would they put divide and untie with small creature? Well, I don't know. I don't have a definite answer for this, but I think it might be because when you look at a crab, it has different segments, like the leg. I think the legs are segmented. So they have little joints in the legs and it just has a crab seems to have a lot of joints. So if you're gonna cook a crab, if you're gonna eat crab, you kind of have to break it and divide it at the segments. So that makes sense to me. And I'm going to play with your mind a little more and break down this portion a little further. So the portion that represents untie and divide. On the left-hand side of untie and divide is a portion that represents a horn, H-O-R-N. H And the portion to the right of that, on top is a knife, and below is an ox with a horn. Could also represent a cow or a bull. So does this remind you of a crab in any way? It does remind me of a crab because I think that the shell of the crab is very much like the horn of an ox or a bull. I think the material that they're made of may be similar. You know, the horn of an ox, the horn of a bull is like a hard material, and the crab legs, the crab back, I think, you know, those two things may be quite similar. And I think that's where the horn may be very much like the crab in terms of the actual substance that it's made of. And the knife and the ox really is just representing that concept of something being divided. Of course, if you want to divide a crab and you want to break it up into pieces, chances are you're going to need a knife, right? So that's not too far-fetched. And how is it like a cow? It's not like a cow, but it is like the horn of a cow, or the horn, well, maybe not of a cow, but of a bull, the horn of a bull or the horn of an ox, okay? So this does really make sense. Now, I know that if you've never encountered Chinese script before and seen it analyzed, that this may seem very alien to you, but I'm sure that this got you thinking a lot about how Chinese people see crabs, okay? Like we don't really see crabs in this way necessarily, but it gives us some food for thought, and it certainly took us outside of our comfort zone. So that was critical thinking crab. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, thank you so much for hitting the like button and also for subscribing to my channel to get more videos just like this. Until next time.